Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled Spacecraft Operator, On-the-Job Training to be an Airline Pilot. Now, you might go, well, how are those related? Well, actually, there is some very good training that comes about if you're a spacecraft operator to be an airline pilot. And I wasn't planning at the time to be an airline pilot. I was going to be a nuclear physicist, actually, but okay, it actually ended up being some very good training, and I will cover that. But first, let's talk about my job there. Oh, and the spacecraft I was operating, it's a spacecraft back in the 70s, very primitive. They hadn't developed yet. This is a artificial intelligence little thing here. They hadn't actually developed the ability to fold out solar cell arrays at the time. If you wanted solar cells on your spacecraft, you stuck them to the side of it, and that's what you got. They had none of these deployable arrays yet. That was much too advanced technology for the time. Okay, I worked for Dr. James Van Allen, who, interestingly enough, discovered the Van Allen radiation belts, and he did that by sending a number of satellites up. This was the fifth in a series. One of the more successful ones. Some of the first ones had very short life due to problems. You know, this is back when satellites were new, back in the 60s going into 70s, and there was a big learning curve. Now, here is the tracking station looking at the satellite. Now, boy, it's wonderful what artificial intelligence will give you. Yeah, not quite that fancy. Here we have the antenna range up at North Liberty, Iowa. I was at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, and we had two dishes there. We used for the Engine 5 satellite, we used the 60-foot dish there with the blue arrow, and we transmitted commands to it using a 10 kilowatt quad Yagi antenna, and the other little dish there you see right below me, that's a 28-foot dish that we didn't really use for too much of anything, unless I guess we had a problem with the big dish. All right, here's what the Engine 5 satellite looked like. We of course don't have any pictures of it in space. That with all the booms deployed next to me, that's an artist's rendering. There were magnetometers and all sorts of radiation detectors that they used to look at the Van Allen radiation belts. The picture on the left there is how the completed satellite looked before it was put on the rocket with all the booms stowed. They did have the ability to deploy the booms, actually. They had a system. The satellite was spun to give it a little bit of stability, and they actually used a magnet through the center of it to align it with the Earth's magnetic pole. So they were able to let the arms deploy by centrifugal force, and if you're a physicist, you know there's no such thing as centrifugal force. It's a lack of centripetal acceleration, but I digress. And of course, I've talked about satellite building in other videos, and it's some pretty crude stuff. There's resistors, diodes, and single component transistors. And the little tags there for Engine 5 are the things that went on the reel-to-reel tapes that we recorded at, I believe, 60 inches a second. They ran through a lot of tape. And there's my girlfriend at the time, now wife of 53 years, but girlfriend at the time, and the blue arrow points to one of the reel-to-reel tape recorders there that they use to record the data on. And of course, this is the very advanced construction, and I'm amazed that this soldering actually passed the test, because this is not up to NASA soldering standards, but this is what went into space. This is actually a unit that failed, and I actually have in my personal collection because it ended up being just kind of junk. Now, the tracking station was up at North Liberty, Iowa, about 7 miles away. We had a microwave link, and I was in the physics building at the time, and we operated it from the second floor. That's where the various pictures are from, next to the control stuff for the satellite. And I had an office up on the fifth floor. Oh, by the way, that corner office facing us up there on the very top, seventh floor, what would be in the corner closest to us, that was Dr. James Van Allen's secret office. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But okay, here I am with the headset on. I'm talking to the North Liberty people, and I had a very long cord because I had to go back and forth about 20 feet between where I controlled the satellite and where I could monitor its status. And here's a little blow up in that blue box there. That's the control panel. We had some 30 commands or so we could send to it. Actually more than that, because there was an up and down, on and off sort of thing. So that's where I actually controlled the satellite from, and I had certain instrumentation there. I could kind of watch what was going on. You see the oscilloscope there and stuff. Here's a blow up of the command generator. That's the thing that we operate the satellite. And so what I'd do is the satellite would come up. We'd start receiving data. I'd start turning experiments on. And the satellite had been up for a while. The solar cells were decreasing in their function. They were getting kind of fried. And the battery was not going so well. So during some of the passes, we would go into darkness and then would operate on the battery. So I would have to command experiments on or off. I would have to run over to the big IBM printer, and there would be a single line where it would go ka-chunk, 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 and it would list what experiments were on, so I could verify that they had actually turned on. And also the output voltage of the solar cells and the battery voltage. So I had to watch it, because if it tripped off, you could only command it for a 2-second window every 30 seconds, which wasn't the best thing, and it would go into a safe mode. Now, how did this prepare me to be an airline pilot? Well, I had to run back and forth between operating and checking things, and the spacecraft was getting sick, so it kind of gave me a little bit of background in handling an airplane that had what you might call deferred items, systems that didn't work well, and then, of course, trying to avoid what would be considered for the spacecraft an emergency when it went into the safe mode. So that kind of trained me to think quickly and on my feet, because yeah, you stood. So I'd go back and forth. So that kind of taught me quick thinking. Now, this was an interesting job. I had, before this, I was a freshman going to Southmore in the university, and I had the job of being a dishwasher before this, and if I was really lucky, they'd let me bust the tables, so I'd actually go get to meet a few people instead of just handling, washing the dishes. So this was a job that I was on 5 days off one, and it continually rotated like that, and I worked basically from 6 or 7 in the evening till sunrise, and then I went to class at the university. Now, the operation of the satellite took about 20 minutes. The passes were 2 hours, so I had an hour and 20 minutes that I could sleep. And in my office on the 5th floor, which I shared with a couple other people, they, of course, weren't there during the evening, so I took their chairs and put 4 of these together, and I slept on this. I did this job for 1.5 years. So it taught me to get sleep in very short increments. It taught me to sleep in very uncomfortable positions, like, your typical, some of the typical crew rest facilities, like on our Hawaii trips. It was a first class seat, which was better than these, but it was just a curtain, and you were next to the lab, and you were next to the galley, so trying to get sleep there, yeah. About the same as trying to get sleep on this. And the interesting thing was I had an alarm clock. It stopped working, and I would basically go up, sleep for an hour 20, and come down. They knew to call me if I didn't show up on time a few minutes before the pass, but I actually slept that bit of time and woke up and never missed a pass. So, and the other thing it taught me, as an airline pilot, at least initially, I made $1.65 an hour, which was good pay back then. And that trained me for my first year of being an airline pilot, where I made $600 a month. So it taught me how to live on very cheap ketchup and things like that. So I think it was real good preparation to be an airline pilot. And they eventually named the building in the 90s to Dr. James Van Allen. They actually put in his name. Before that, it was simply the physics building. And on the left is his office up on the 7th floor. This was kind of cool because only a very few people knew about his office. And since I worked directly for him in this, and then operating the Van de Graaff accelerator, which calibrated the space probes on Pioneer 1011, I knew where he hid out. And it was a really cool office. It was like a canyon in there with these huge bookshelves and just just data and stuff everywhere. It was really kind of a neat little niche that he would go out and hide. His formal office was on the second floor, but this is where he went out and hide. And it was really quite an honor to work for such a noted space physicist. And like I mentioned before, at the time, space physics didn't exist. He started out in nuclear physics. There was no space physics. He essentially invented it because we hadn't had satellites yet. Anyway, that's a little bit about how operating a satellite can teach you or train you to be an airline pilot. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.